Good evening, guys.
Oh, that's for me.
I'm gonna give it just a minute more. I have a few more registered. See if they come in, and then we'll get started. So fun. All right, we'll go ahead and get started, guys, because I need to get out on time tonight as well. All right, so we're going to talk about running a calorie deficit tonight, and then like some training techniques to improve your performance and your results inside of the gym. Figure we'd start with like the calorie cutting because it's going to take the most time, or you probably have the most questions about it. Because the gym stuff's pretty easy, really. It's just kind of stuff that you have to do when you're in there. So do you guys have specific questions, or do you just want me to talk about a deficit? A couple of you on here have run a deficit with me. So, I mean, you know the protocol. Do you have specific questions that you want me to answer? Because you're now going to try and run one on your own. Kenzie, do you have, I know, Kenzie, you're kind of in the reverse diet, if I'm remembering that correctly, going through it. So you'll be close to a cut. Well, I don't know where your calories were and how far you got to come up, but you will be doing a cut post reverse, I'm assuming. Do you have specific questions? You guys tell me. No? No one's going to say anything?
I don't have any specific questions. I just like, I guess, to hear it again.
Hear it again? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So let's just talk a calorie deficit and how you run a calorie deficit. So first, you have to be in a good position to run a calorie deficit and respond to it. So if you're currently trying to lose weight and you're doing all the things that you've done in the past and nothing is working for you, or you are running a calorie deficit with extremely low calories and you're over exercising, you're not going to respond to a calorie deficit. Maybe you've got some weight loss resistance, and the weight loss resistance would come from doing the chronic dieting and the over exercising, and all of that. So that what happens when you do chronic dieting and over exercising, or you can just be chronic dieting and not exercising, your body is always going to match whatever you put in it. It's always going to adapt. Okay. And in the world of weight loss, adaptation is a bad thing. We don't want to become efficient at losing weight, because that's what's a plateau where you stall out. So when you crash diet or reduce calories to a really low amount, and it may work initially, maybe you get 2-3 weeks of a loss and then you stall out. And that's that metabolic adaptation that occurs. Okay. Because say we're eating 1,200 calories, it's a very, very low amount of calories. Here comes everybody. A very low amount of calories. So your body is going to meet that 1,200 calories coming in. So it is going to ramp down all metabolic processes, okay, to conserve energy, because you're putting a lot of stress on the body being in this low calorie amount. So if you do a calorie deficit and you want to respond to a calorie deficit and do it the right way, and also learn how to maintain the weight loss, you have to have like the engine roaring, okay? You have to have everything firing and going in the oven, which is your body. So you have to bring calories up. You have to reverse diet and bring those calories up to a good amount, get your body well fed, get hormones optimized, get gut health optimized, metabolism increases. So like I said a minute ago, when it ramps down and meets the low calories that you're containing, that's lowering metabolism. Well, it works in reverse. So as we gradually increase calories, which is what a reverse diet does, the metabolism slowly starts to pick back up to process, digest, and distribute the food coming back in. So it increases your metabolism eating more. So, you know, and in the crash diet culture, or the diet culture, the stuff that you guys see on TV and all these weight loss things, the only thing that it's doing is just sinking those metabolisms. You actually need to eat a lot and then try and drop your calories. And those of you that have been with me and done a reverse diet, you see, right? You didn't gain any weight going through the reverse diet. Composition actually changed, right? Because we cleaned up food as we're increasing food. It's not just increasing food and eating Chick-fil-A and mashed potatoes, or, you know, not there's anything wrong with mashed potatoes, but you know what I'm saying? It's not increasing food and eating crappy food. It's increasing food, changing the quality of the food, training correctly, getting proper hydration, increasing or getting better sleep quality, starting to learn how to manage stress. All of that stuff 100% contributes to the amount of calories that you will be able to burn in a day. And so getting to that point and then dropping your calories. So let's say we're all to this point, right? We're all in a really good, healthy spot. Metabolism is going great. Gut health is good. You're pooping every day. You don't have a lot of bloating, constipation, abnormal gas, anything like that. You're digesting your food, which means we're absorbing our nutrients and our minerals as well when our bowels are working correctly, which is a huge part to weight loss, weight gain, weight maintenance. Where water intake is good, sleep is good. We're getting a minimum of 7 hours of sleep a night, and we're managing stress to our best of ability. So then you want to drop calories, and you only want to do a small reduction, right? We always want to lose weight with as much food as possible and the least amount of exercise as possible. So when I run calorie deficits with clients, by the time I get them to a point where we're ready to do the reverse diet, we've got our exercise regimen or our habits built in. Like everything else, the foundation is nice and laid down. So the only thing that we change is calories. Nothing else changes. We don't change exercise. We don't change anything else. The only thing that we manipulate to lose weight is calories, okay? Because you have to remember also, whatever amount of exercise you utilize to lose weight, you have to maintain that same amount of exercise to maintain the weight loss. So you always want to be doing whatever is sustainable and something that you can see yourself doing for the rest of your life. So if that's 3 days a week of exercise, then you go into your calorie deficit doing 3 days a week of exercise. If it's 5 days a week, then it's 5 days a week, but it needs to be something that you can sustain and maintain to sustain and maintain the weight loss. Okay. That makes sense so far to everybody? We're good. Okay. So if we run the calorie deficit, it just needs to be a small amount. Okay. And everybody that's on here at least should be getting up to 2,000, 2,100, maybe 2,200 calories, if not more, depending upon activity level, age, and all that kind of stuff. But at least everybody should be pushing 2,000 calories. Okay. So if we're at this, for easy numbers, if we're at the 2,000 calorie mark, I'm going to drop you to 1,700, right? And we're going to ride 1,700 and see what kind of weight loss we can get with that. Because at 1,700 calories, that's minus 300 calories every day over 7 days, that's a 2,100 calorie reduction. You should see some weight loss at that. That's 2,000 calories you pulled out of your diet, right? So we should see a reduction. Then over time, how I run my cuts and how I run it and put it in the program here on the website is in 30-day cycles. And there's no magic to 30 days, guys. The reason that I do 30 days is because it's worked very, very well for me and with my clients. Clients can stick or adhere to a plan when they know it's 30 days. If I ask a client to diet for 16 weeks, that's when we get burnout. That's when we get the restrict binge things. That's when adherence drops, compliance drops. They get tired of dieting. They want to just go do this, and they'll take an entire weekend and just completely blow it to shit. But if you give a small window that is very doable, you need to make sure that there's no traveling, there's no big events, nothing like that that falls during this calorie deficit period where you can put 100% into it and run it for 30 days. And so in that 30-day period, when I run the calorie deficit, I do run it pretty aggressive, right? Because again, I'm not dieting for 16 weeks. We're not going slow and steady. We're pushing really hard for 30 days because you could adhere for 30 days, and I want to get you results, and you want to get results in 30 days. So we'll drop to 1,700 calories. We'll ride that for 1 week, no matter what. You'll always ride your first week for whatever deficit you decide to start with. It's what you need to do. It's going to take your body a couple of days, to figure out that it's going to be short calories for an extended period of time, right? Because we're just coming out of this really well-fed state. So it's going to take a couple of days for the body to register that and start to adapt to this calorie reduction. So we'll run that for a week, and then we'll do a check-in. We'll look at weigh-ins, daily weigh-ins, okay? This is where you need to start paying attention to daily versus your average, because now we're looking for high outliers and low outliers. So if we get a week of running a calorie reduction and we get a couple low points in there, that's a really good sign, okay? And that's one of the things that I would look at when deciding whether or not to continue to drop calories, okay? The other things that are just important as the scale when you run a calorie deficit is all those things that I talked about that are just important when we're trying to get you to a place to be able to drop weight. Your stress, your sleep, your water intake, your workouts, your digestion. You need to, and that's what's in the tracker, you need to look at that and manage that. So if during your week you had 3 really shitty, stressful days, your sleep was shit, right? You didn't manage things well. The water intake dropped because of whatever was going on. We didn't get workouts in, blah, 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 blah. And we didn't see any progress that week, right? That doesn't mean just go and drop calories straight. It means you need to reflect on the stress and the sleep, because if you're not going to get those guys fixed and I keep reducing calories, you're not going to respond very well. You have to have the hydration. You have to have the sleep management and the stress management during a calorie deficit to respond really well to it. And those of you that have been through a calorie deficit with me and had high stress periods, you can totally attest to that, right? Or even now in maintenance, if your scale spikes a couple of pounds and you haven't changed a thing, you haven't changed your food, you haven't changed workouts, nothing changed. The only thing that changed was the stress, right? It can make you put on 3-4 pounds of water retention just from stress. And the reason for that is because our cortisol levels get elevated. When our cortisol levels are elevated, so is insulin. And so that means that we have carbohydrates floating around in the bloodstream that are not being utilized. We're hanging on to them. It's water retention, it's inflammation, right? And as soon as you get that stress down and your sleep goes better, the weight comes right back off. So all of this stuff you really have to pay attention to when you're doing a calorie deficit, and you have to kind of get out of your own way. And I think that's what a lot of people have issues with when they're doing weight loss programs, period, is you get in your head way too much and you get in your way. And if you would just hang tight for 1 or 2 more days, you would see the progress instead of trying to either jump ship and go do something else like, oh, this program isn't working, or dropping your calories like another 400 calories because, you know, more is always better. And that's not it. So that's why you have the tracker. So if you're doing it through the program online or you're a one-to-one client with me, that's why every single week I ask you all of those questions every single week, because it makes a difference in your progress 100%. Any questions on that? That was a whole lot of info. No questions on that. Okay, so let's say everything's great. We dropped to 1,700 calories. We had a great week. We handled it like a boss. Stress was good. Sleep was good. And we didn't see a whole lot of progress. Maybe like a half pound on the scale, something like that. Inches didn't really shift. Go ahead and pull to 1,600 then, okay? And you only want to reduce by 100 calories, not 200, not 300. Again, always lose weight with the most amount of food possible, okay? I never, ever take a client below 1,300 calories. And hardly ever do I honestly get to a point where I take a client to 1,300 calories to lose weight. Typically, I can get them to lose plenty of weight in a 30-day period between 1,600 and 1,400 calories. So if you're doing this on your own, you should never go below 1,300. If you're not losing weight at 1,300 calories, something else is wrong. You need to come back up, you need to feed yourself, and you need to restart the program, okay? Because if you're not responding at 13, you're not gonna respond at 12, you're not gonna respond at 11, and the only thing you're doing is crushing your metabolism even more, all right? So week 1 was great, handled stress, everything was good, didn't see the progress that we think we should, okay? It was very minimal, dropped to 1,600. Again, take that. So probably on week 2, I start doing like midweek check-ins, right? I start seeing if we're moving along, because we're now 10, 11, 12 days in. We should see some progress. All right. We've pulled calories down. We're now down at 1,600 calories times 7. We're down at a 2,800 calorie reduction for the week. We should see some calories, some weight coming off, or some composition changes. That's the other thing too. That's why we measure, guys, because maybe the scale isn't moving, but we're dropping inches. We're dropping off the hips. We're seeing changes somewhere. So that's why you need to look at both of them. If you're seeing nice changes, hold at the 16. I have one client that I held her at 1,600 for a straight 4 weeks, and she dropped every single week on the 1,600. I never had to change it again. And then we pulled her back up and got her calories back up for her to go on vacation. So you may not have to go below 1,600. If you're losing at that pace and it's a good pace and you feel like you're making good progress, stay there. You don't have to move it, okay? Because the more you go down, the more you have to come back up, right? So again, holding at 16, don't see a lot of progress of what we think we should, go to 15 on week 3, and you could go to 14 on week 4. Does that make sense? But you shouldn't, if you're doing it right, you're in a good position, like I was saying, you shouldn't have to get down to that 1,400 mark. Now, maybe if you've done, this is your 5th or 6th cut, you might have to. And again, it goes back to your body learns what you do, okay? So the more cut periods you go through, and it's also the leaner you're getting every time you cut, the harder it is to pull body fat off. So you may have to push a little harder, a little quicker, the more you get into it. But if it's your very first or second, or maybe even third calorie deficit that you're running, you shouldn't have to get that low if you did it right, if you set yourself up right from the beginning, okay, on that. Now, coming out of it, we're going to talk about calorie deficit, but I want to talk about the importance of the reverse, coming out of your calorie deficit. How you don't put the weight back on, okay, is you slowly have to increase your calories 100 at a time to let the body adapt to pick back up with the calories as you're coming back up. And if you go slow, and if you stick to the program, which this is harder, I honestly think, than the actual deficit, because once you've done the deficit, you're hungry, you've lost the weight, you just want to eat food again, right? So it's very hard to be disciplined and stay in that reverse and do it correctly. But if you want, this is how you sustain your weight loss, guys. So as you're coming out of the deficit, you have to slowly 100 calories each week, or maybe you need to go a week and a half or 2 weeks. We'll talk about that in just a second. And stick to your calories. So if I ended my calorie deficit at 1,500 calories, I would start my reverse at 1,600 calories, okay? And how I look at it when you're going through your reverse is 1,600 calories times 7 days is 11,200 calories. So you can consume 11,200 calories over the next 7 days. So you have a little bit of give, right? So if you ended up eating 1,650 on one day, no problem, but you got to pull those 50 calories out of the next day, okay? You just cannot surpass that 7-day calorie total. You got to be tight. And that week, that first week coming out of your calorie deficit, you're going to be hungry, okay? Because you're putting the food back into the system. It's going to spike those hunger hormones again, and your hunger is going to increase, all right? And you have to stay strong. You have to stay disciplined and not eat more than your calorie allotment, all right? It gets better each week thereafter, all right? And I call that like the 5th week of the cut, typically when you're coming out of it. A lot of times, not every time, I don't want to make promises, but a lot of times clients will actually see another drop that 5th week. And the reason for that is because you start to put the calories back in, the body will relax a little bit. All right. So when we're in a reduced calorie state, even though it's like 1,500 calories, it's a big deficit from where you were when you started at your 2,000, right? So it's stress on the body. It's very much stress on the body. So as we start to refeed that body and put calories back in, the body begins to relax. It knows now that you're going to feed it again, and it might drop some more for you. You might see a little bit more composition or weight off the scale on that 5th week. Okay. But every week thereafter, your goal is to maintain your weight and maintain your measurements that you had at the end of your calorie deficit. So you run your 7 days coming out of your calorie deficit. And again, here's where you need to go back and review all of your markers, your weigh-ins, your measurements, your stress, your digestion, your water intake, your sleep, your digestion. I don't know if I said that. Your activity level, all of that stuff needs to be evaluated. Okay. If you have a large gain from your calorie deficit to your first week, one, you went over your calories. There's no doubt about it. So you need to hold. You need to hold at that 1600 mark for another week, and you need to let your body catch back up. Okay. And you should flatten back out if you get your discipline back on and you do it like you're supposed to. But let's say you come out of your calorie deficit, you're perfect with your calories coming out of it that first week, everything holds just fine, nothing changes, then increase by 100. And you keep repeating that each week until you get yourself back up to your 2000, your 2100, your 2200 calories, okay? And eating at that good, well-fed state, you should be maintaining your weight and your measurements. Now, I do want to say on the scale, okay? The scale is going to fluctuate, guys, okay? At 1,400 calories, that's less food than 2,200 calories. So from 1,400, or just 2,000 to make it easy, from 1,400 to 2,000, that's a 600 calorie increase, right? Well, there's more water retention with the more food that we eat. So your scale might go up a pound, maybe a pound and a half. You didn't gain weight. You're just putting more water back in the body with the food, okay? That's why we really watch the measurements in the reverse. If the measurements hold, I am 100% fine every time, okay? The other thing that I forgot to put in here is your cycle, guys. Your cycle, all of you know that. How many freaking cycles have you had now in your life? Hundreds of them, right? We have 12 a year, and we're all however old. So you know, right? You know your symptoms either come the week before or 2 days before or around the cycle. You know that scale is going to fluctuate around the cycle. So if you're in a deficit and your cycle hits and the scale spikes, don't drop the calories. You ride out the cycle at the current calories, okay? Because the cycle can skew everything, your measurements, your scale, water retention, like all of that kind of stuff. So I never, ever make changes during a cycle, all right? So that's something that you really have to pay attention to when you're in it, and listen to your body and pay attention. But like I said, you know when your symptoms, like my symptoms are always the week before, is when I have my water retention. I'll see the scale spike, like I'll be feeling fantastic, like fit and great, and I'll get on the scale and I'll be up 4 freaking pounds, and I'm like, what the F? You know, I didn't eat anymore, or I didn't do anything crazy, blah, 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 blah. And then I have a cycle tracker in my phone, and I go back and I'll take a look at it, and I'm like, oh, it's the week before. It always does. And then actually when I'm on my cycle, I drop back down. But I have some clients in the cycle, the scale pops up. It's just, you know, it's everybody's dependent, hormones, body, however it works. But you have to take that into consideration. And I just recommend making 0 changes when you're on your cycle, or in the 2-3 day period of your heaviest symptoms or whatever comes with your period for you. Ride it out, then make changes from there. Okay, any questions? So that's basically a calorie deficit and how to come out of your deficit in a nutshell. Anybody? No? Okay. I guess y'all got it then. Y'all are gonna ace it and show me all your calorie deficits and your reverses beautifully, well, which is great.
I do have a question.
Okay.
So I know when I was doing my cuts, how would you figure out like your macros, like the number of carbs you needed and protein and fats and things like that?
That's a good question. So in your deficit period, okay, you need at least, if any time that you hit it, you need at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. Typically, I go higher actually in a deficit because of what's called protein synthesis. So we may consume 30 grams of protein, lean chicken breast, all right? And this is person dependent, age, female versus male, etc. You may actually only get 60% of that 30 grams that's utilized for muscle or protein, muscle building, okay? And it's very dependent. So you actually need to consume a little bit more than 1 gram per pound of body weight to try and maintain the current lean mass, okay? Because you guys can do a calorie deficit and lose weight, but increase body fat actually. And why that is because one, you're not strength training, you're not sending that stimulus to the brain to maintain the lean mass that you have, because you're going to pick up shit, heavy shit, and put it back down all the time, right? How I always said that the body adapts to whatever you ask, it goes to training as well, all right? If I'm telling the brain 3-4 times a week that I'm going to keep picking up this heavy stuff, the body's going to do everything it can to hold on to that muscle to adapt and make you efficient at weightlifting, right? That efficiency thing comes back in. So one, if we're not strength training, two, if we're not providing the nutrition for the body to hold on to that lean mass, okay? If I'm not eating a high protein diet or getting protein in my system, the body doesn't have the nutrition to hold on to that lean mass, because our muscles are literally made up of protein, right? So we need to be eating that protein. So shoot for at least 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. But like I said, when I run a cut with a client, I at least go 10 grams higher, maybe 15. Again, it depends on the client and what I can get out of the client. But I run that protein high. Next is fat grams. Typically when I'm running a calorie deficit, I stay at like 50 grams of fat or less. Again, it depends on the client and where I'm starting them with calories and who they are. None of this is black and white, but a general rule of thumb is 50 grams or less, okay? So set up your nutrients to get a high protein, and then at 50 grams, and then whatever's left, I dump into carbohydrates, okay? And you keep shifting that as you keep decreasing your calories. You have to shift your protein percentages to keep that protein up. The fat's gonna go down and the carbs are gonna go down during that. Coming out of my deficit, I'm gonna work my way back up. I'm still gonna hold that 1 gram of protein per pound of body fat, and I'm gonna start pulling back on those calories as I increase my protein calories, as I increase overall calories, to put more calories into my carbohydrates and my fats. So if I end at, let's say, like 45 grams of fat, maybe 40 grams of fat in the calorie deficit, I'm definitely gonna start working to put calories back into my fats, because hormones love the fats and we want to keep the fat or the hormones happy and all that kind of stuff. The other beauty side note to only running a 30-day cut is the likelihood of us having metabolic adaptation with those lower calories is very minimal versus if we ran it for 16 weeks. They show about 6 weeks is when adaptation comes in. So we want to get the fats back in, start making the brain happy, the hormones happy, and all that kind of stuff. So I will work on getting my fats slowly back up. Typically fats, when you're at maintenance level, you want 1 gram of fat per 2 pounds of body weight. So if I was 140 pounds, I would want 70 grams of fat at maintenance calories. Does that make sense? Okay, so I'm going to keep my protein at that 1 gram per pound of body weight. I'm going to gently work my way up with my fats, and then I'm going to dump everything else back into my carbohydrates. So gently working my way up back with my carbs and my fats. The other thing too, guys, every gram of carbohydrate that you consume, you hold 2.7 grams of water. So again, how I talked earlier, if we're going from 1,400 calories to 2,000 calories, your carbohydrates are going to spike. You're going to easily be eating 200 plus grams of carbohydrates. You're holding more water with those carbs. So it's not fat gain. There is going to be a gain on the scale with water retention from the foods coming back in. Okay. Okay. Does that answer it? Is that good? Yes. Okay. All right. Any other questions, guys, about the deficit or the reverse? Anything like that? No? Okay. All right. So we got a few minutes. Let's hit training techniques. So to get the most bang out of your buck when you're working out, and if you're doing my workouts, I say this in the workouts all the time, put your mind in the muscle. Literally think about the muscle that you're working. Don't just go through the reps to get the exercise done and just say that you did it and so that you feel better, which we all have days like that, right? But I'm saying for the most part, you really need to think about what you're working, okay? It's not about pushing the heaviest weight that you can, all right? It's about having a solid contraction in the muscle that we're trying to work, okay? That's why if you look at like a bodybuilder versus a power lifter, if you look at their shapes, like bodybuilder's super lean, right? We see all the lines on the bodybuilder. You look at a power lifter, they look like farm boy strong. Does that make sense? You know they're strong, but there's not a lot of lines, not a lot of definition, because they're just pushing heavy weight around. They're not focused on the bicep contraction, to the shoulder overhead press. They're just trying to push some heavy weight over their head or push some weight this way. A bodybuilder can take 5-pound dumbbell and make you cry with it when they're working with you and showing you how to contract and release the muscle. Okay. So the other things that I say in my workouts that you guys hear is that you're working the up just as much as we are the down, right? So a lot of people will really focus on having, let's just use bicep curl for, an example. They'll work on, actually not on the bicep curl. You see a lot of this, right? On bicep curls, we see a lot of momentum and swinging. So there's no mind muscle connection with that as well. If you're stopping, if we're at a stop position and I literally think about squeezing my bicep, even with no weight in my hand right now, I have such a tight contraction in my bicep, thinking about what I am bringing up. Okay. And then, so I've got this huge tight bicep contraction right here. Now, when I'm lowering it down, I want to, in my mind, resist that. I want to fight as hard as I can to keep me from straightening out that arm. Okay. So just if you can really, really think about what you're working when you're going through the workouts, where you should feel the contraction, where you should feel the burn. And even with lighter weight, you will get such better results in your workouts. Your performance will improve, your recovery will improve, and you'll start to see that definition that you want. Really thinking about what we're working, thinking about our form, having good, strong positioning wherever we are, all the things that I'm saying in the video, really doing it. I mean, I know you guys, a lot of you guys go through them with me, but when I'll talk to like one-on-one clients or on a Saturday morning and stuff, and I'm seeing some of the workouts, I'm seeing that they're not doing that kind of stuff, the things that I'm talking about in the video. So if you just slow down, think about what we're working. If you got to hit pause so that you can slow down, hit pause. And I tell my clients this all the time. I would rather you not complete a workout because you're going so slow because you're focused on form than just to get through the workout with shitty reps. You're going to get way better results not completing the workout, focused on your form and what you're doing in that workout, only completing half of a workout than you did doing the full workout with shitty reps every single time. Okay. The other thing is form. Form is absolutely huge when you're doing it, really working on your mobility of your joints, your shoulder joints, your hips, your ankles, and things like that, so that you have good control when you're doing your squats, your lunges, your overhead presses, deadlifts, whatever that may be. That is an excellent way to improve performance, recovery, and get those aesthetic goals that you want. Okay. You can, obviously, if you're coming from not doing anything and we start resistance training, you're going to see results. It's a new stimulus. But like I've said, with food and everything else, the body always adapts and it always tries to become the most efficient that it can. So you have to challenge it. You have to continually provide a new stimulus so that you're warranting off the adaptation or the efficiency of lifting weights. And one way to do that is mind-muscle connection. Really, really focusing on those contractions and the release of the contraction when you're doing your workout. So, and then obviously nutrition and stuff make a difference. But when you're performing in the gym, that's the biggest thing. That's my biggest thing, is having as much control as I can through the range of motion, getting the biggest range of motion that I can, changing up my intensity, whether it be time under tension, reps, weights, the isometric contraction, holding a certain move like a wall sit, that's an isometric contraction, things like that. But really through all of them, think about what I'm working, thinking about the muscle that I'm supposed to be contracting, feeling it contract, and then resisting that release of the muscle as well. All right, any questions about training? Anything else I can help on that? Nobody? Okay, well, that's all I got. Unless you guys have any other questions that I didn't answer or anything else I can help with tonight. No, silence. Okay, all right, then I'm calling it. I'm ready to go to bed. It's been a long day. All right, guys. I have the next one because this was makeup for last week. The next one will be actually this Sunday coming up. I actually haven't thought of a topic. So if you guys have something that you would like to discuss and you want to tune in on Sunday, shoot me a message to go over it. I'll be happy to discuss anything that you guys want to talk about. But the next Zoom will be Sunday evening. Okay. All right. Y'all have a nice evening.
Thank you.
Welcome. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.